Great day, everyone. Ed Dudley coming at you yet again. I'm still in Durham, North Carolina. One day I will record from somewhere else other than Durham, but for now, still in Durham, North Carolina, in the United States. And I have my amazing chocolate co-host, Miss Charmaine Subramani. What's going on, Charmaine?
Hello, Silhouette. It's fabulous to be here. Nothing's going on, actually, just enjoying your company. It's Friday evening. Looking forward to having a great weekend, actually. But it's always awesome to be in your company, so I'm excited.
It's all mine.
Yeah.
We just have a good time. We hear some amazing stories that I know inspire me and invite me to continue to do this and continue to just talk to other people. Stories are what we all need to hear these days because we all go through something. We either been through something or we're about to go into something, and hearing a perspective from someone that has gone on the other side or dealt with something, it really helps and put things in perspective. So we have a very interesting person.
Is that all the word that you could come up with? Interesting.
There's a lot of
dynamic.
I use the word
good looking. A biker boy.
Biker Boy. Hey, there was a movie called Biker Boys. I don't know if you saw it over there in South Africa with Lawrence Fishburne. If you haven't seen it, watch Biker Boys. No. You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it, Biker Boys. BMX rider has a very genuine and powerful story. I met him probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and we just had a conversation that, he inspired me right then on the conversation. So I'm excited to bring in the one, the only Mr. BMX, Josh Perry.
Welcome to Ubuntu House.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you guys. And that was quite the intro. So I appreciate it.
How you feeling today?
Oh, I'm feeling fantastic. And I actually really appreciate that question because I get asked, how are you doing? And I tend to realize that people fake that response, like, oh, I'm fine, and I try to ask people, how are you feeling? Because I'm more interested in the feelings and what that does to a human being rather than how are you doing? So with that said, I really appreciate that question. I'm feeling fantastic.
Yeah, it's something that I started asking a few years ago because just like you, how you doing and just everything, but how are you feeling? And then I've taken it a little further. All right, how are you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I'm absolutely amazing, I'm doing absolutely wonderful, and 1 be like, I just feel like giving up. And I ask them, rate yourself on that scale. And if you're 5 or below, all right, what's going on? What can we do to help move it up a couple notches? So I appreciate you, asking the same question. So I'd love for you to just introduce yourself because people from South Africa and some other parts of the world are tuning in. And I think everyone at one point in time has ridden a bike.
I did a BMX.
I had a BMX. I had a mongoose.
Nope.
At one time.
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
Date myself a little bit. But Josh, just share a little bit about who you are and all that good stuff, and then we'll dive into, talking a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that's another interesting question, which we'll have to save for later on. But I guess just because that question, I find the responses of like how we identify with like what we do and who we are in the past and things like that. So today, for the sake of this conversation, I'm a very passionate, driven person, very focused on the vision for my ideal life. And with that said, I've been through a lot. I've learned a lot through the experiences that I've gone through. And so today I love helping people optimize their mindset and health to elevate their performance in all aspects of life. And I really love defining that word performance because many people think that it's just something to do with physical attributes or activity, which is what I believe to do as a professional athlete in my past. And so really changing the narrative on performance and just really focusing on the brain and your brain health and how well it's performing, whether you're a parent, a executive, a entrepreneur, an athlete, an artist, whatever it may be. So with that said, I'm a former professional BMX athlete. That's what I used to do. And multiple brain tumor survivor, which is what opened me up to auditing my life and realizing what I was doing to potentially fuel the disease that I was battling and also what I wasn't doing to combat it. So I learned the hard way, as I like to say, and I love what I do today because at the end of the day, if all else fails and I can do one thing, this one thing for me to define what I do as a success is just to get someone to change the way they look at their lives, themselves, or the reality they've created, and really take ownership of that fact that they are at cause rather than being at effect of their life. So yeah, I know that's a little bit of a word salad, but I just can't help but describe, the different elements of who I am rather than, what I do or don't do, because I see that being put in a box, and I feel like I'm more multi-dimensional than just one way, which is what I used to think. I'm a BMX rider, and I'm much more than that. And it took me a while to really learn that.
So, like, before we dive into some of the meat of the conversation, you said you look at the vision of your ideal life. So, for you, what is the vision of your ideal life?
Yeah, I mean, simply put, it's just living a life that I feel is very congruent to how I want to feel. And I want to feel freedom at the end of the day in all aspects of who I am, inside and out, and the life I live. So that's why I took the route of being an entrepreneur. I want to be able to design my time and how I spend that time and the work I do, and not check in with someone else. So, when it comes to relationships, I want to freely express myself. I'm very thankful to have met my fiance through an interesting path that we took to, connecting us. So, freedom to me is just all aspects of life, financially, time, how I live my life, how I design my life. And to me, that's just being on purpose to help other people as a way of how I define success is, what I experience and what I learned and how I grow. I want to be able to help other people do that in their own way. And I just really want to enjoy the life I create. And so I want to be able to go on trips. I love exploring. My fiance and I love taking trips and just going to new places and being adventurous. I love golfing, just meeting new people, telling stories, sharing stories. And so it looks different on many different levels. But to summarize, it's just feeling like I'm actually expressing myself freely in all the things I do and really enjoying what I do and how I live my life rather than being defined by my past and, defined and confined to circumstances that I've put myself in and not being able to see out of it. And I always want to be able to see beyond it. And that's something I've learned that we all possess, is an opportunity to change our perspective, to see beyond our circumstances. And I was one of those people that was trapped in my circumstances. And I had many of those similar circumstances reoccur to remind me like, hey, you can see beyond this because you've done it once and other people have. And that's a really big part of my vision, is sharing my story, my truth, ultimately to help other people become inspired to see beyond their circumstances. And like I said earlier, if all I do is help someone change the perspective, then that's the first domino to me to causing the domino effect of change occurring for their lives, and then be able to get on path to creating what they see as their ideal vision for their lives.
That's beautiful and powerful in so many levels. So you love experiences as well. I clearly do. Just immersing yourself in it. I want to take you back to 2010. You achieved your goal to be a professional BMX rider, right? What did that feel like for you once you achieved what you intended, right? That's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting question because I never at the time really took the time to soak it in. I was just so consumed by what I was doing, and I had been focused for so long on that journey, and then it made sense because that was what I was focused on, and I wasn't conscious of it. But in the time, it was just like I was 13 when I discovered action sports on that level, and I was like, oh, you can make a career out of this. Like, I see these guys on TV, and the women doing this and the men doing that, and it's like I can do that. Like, that's an opportunity. And so I was just so focused on what I needed to do to make that a reality for my life, realize my dreams. And so when it started to, each step of the way, it was a natural progression. So it started with beginner and amateur level sport or competition, and then, regional, and then national. And then it just kept going up in the ranks. And it was I just was doing all the things. And so when I finally made it to let's say X Games and then Do Tour, which was a dream come true, it was I'm here, and here's the task at hand. I'm living my dream. Let's keep doing it. It wasn't I wasn't even in the mind of having the capacity to really think about it and soak it in until later on when 2010 occurred and the first brain tumor diagnosis came about, and I was just stopped in my tracks. And I was like, man, literally the first thing I thought of was I'm going to die. And then I started to reflect on the life I was living and all that went into that, what I was able to accomplish. And then that became that first the catalyst to me really focusing in on the present moment and starting to enjoy and embrace it, But at the time, I was just like, this is just what I was doing and what I love to do. And I created this. Let's just keep going and let's just focus on maintaining this, which is a large element of what helped me overcome that first brain tumor. Was just, what do I need to do to continue doing this, and what is that I want to do? Let's focus in on that rather than, what if I don't wake up from surgery, or what if I come out with all the risks I had to sign off of being a possibility. It was just, here's the path, here's the journey. This is what it takes to get back on the path in my case. So I never really took time to really absorb what I was doing. I was just fully immersed in it and just living it. And then now, of course, even 12 years later, I'm like, man, like it was such a beautiful thing to not only develop such a vision of a dream at a young age like that, and then to realize it, but to continue realizing it and pursuing it. And then now being in the path of being what I call on purpose to help other people do the same in their own respected manners of whatever they deem valuable to them. So yeah, to summarize, like in the moment, I was living it. I just was so immersed in it. I just didn't even think to reflect on it. And I think that's largely due because I was 21 and I still had about 4 or 5 years of my prefrontal cortex to be developed to be able to have that ability to, take on metacognition and think about my reality and, take myself out of it for a minute. But now that's something I've become obsessed with doing because it's just brought so much positivity and just learnings and so much to my life that it makes sense. It's like why I'm obsessed with reflecting and getting back on the path and being in the moment.
I mean, you said so many beautiful things, actually. What was clear to me was the fact that if you focus your energy and you put all your effort into it, you can actually realize your dream, and you did with your BMS. That discipline also helps you strengthen your mind to focus on how you're going to come out of this operation that you were going to be subjected to, and you did. So there's so many powerful lessons that could come out from that story. Because I was sharing with Ed, I mean, one of my favorite cousins died at the age of 20 on the operating table because he had a brain tumor and it didn't come out of it. And also about the misdiagnosis that you've actually had. So the point that I want to actually make to many people listening, is that don't believe what your doctor tells you. You know your body best. You need to be able to literally question and find another doctor to actually help you go through the challenges. I know I'm digressing, but I needed to make that point because I researched you because I was firstly impressed that you're a pro BMX guy, impressed with the fact that you're doing the work that you're doing, impressed that you came through so many surgeries and you have this positive energy about you and you want to help unleash other people's talents and potential. So yes, I did stalk you. So I'm going to hand over to Ed. So I'll keep quiet now.
That is a lie. She's not going to keep quiet. So just to let you know right now. I talked about how I had a mongoose and all that. It was my brother that was like the rider. Like to this day, he rides motorcycles and stuff because I remember us on our BMX bikes, and you remember how you used to make your own ramps and you jump over the ramps and all that stuff. To see you go so high in your career at a young age, absolutely young age. When you sit back and you look back, because you do a lot of self-reflecting, when it was your last ride, and you knew it was your last ride, competition, what was going through your mind?
So I didn't know it was going to be my last competition. Okay. 2016, October 30th, 2016 in China was my last event I ever competed at. I didn't know that. The way that evolved was very interesting because it was a combination of losing. It was really, the main thing was losing my main sponsor, which was helping me fuel my travels. Many people don't know this, but BMX isn't as big as it used to be with corporate sponsors. And, you win a contest. If you have sponsors, you maybe make a net profit. But if you don't have sponsors, you're talking, $1,500 flight, because it's not just domestic, it's global. So the FIS World Series was my last contest and it was in China. So, $1,600 flight, then you're there for a week of a hotel. And then, if you win, before you get 15% tax because it's a French owned company, they take it out automatically. Maybe, $8,000 for first place drops dramatically. And then if you have expenses to pay yourself back, like maybe you break even, maybe you make $1,000 or $2,000, which, back in the day, you win X Games, it was like 50 grand, just for that event. Then your sponsors are paying you all that. But it's changed a lot over the years. And now, thankfully, the Olympics have helped bring those corporate sponsors back in and, putting more prize money in and stuff like that. So at the time, I didn't know it was going to be my last event. I didn't know that. I was fully focused on 2017 because November 2015, my fiance now at the time, she was my athletic trainer, and a great friend for like a year and a half before we started dating, she convinced me to get my ACL surgery. I was riding with a torn ACL for 2 years. Thankfully, in our sport, we don't have like lateral movements. It's just like you're on the bike pedaling, and you're pretty stationary as far as like your movements going back and forth with your legs. So I was able to use a knee brace on and off throughout the years and just keep doing my thing. She convinced me that it's better to get it fixed. So then I was starting to have problems. I tweaked it again. Other things were occurring, other problems because of not getting it fixed, as you can imagine. So I made an agreement with her. And I was like, if I can get it done before Thanksgiving this year, I know I'll have enough time to be able to compete next year, to get back through recovery and then rehab and training and all that. So I did so successfully. And I was so focused on all the elements from mentally, biologically, nutrition and all that, and then physically to get back. So I had my best year competing in 2016, and I was so focused on the next year. I was like, I'm doing this. My main sponsor backed out of our deal last minute. And so I was like 2 weeks before the first event, and I was like, I don't even have a ticket book, and like I don't have the funds to do this. And that was a moment where I was like, what do I do with what's going on? And I also, right before that, so let me back up. February 2017, got a third brain tumor diagnosis, which resulted at the time me having 4 brain tumors going on. April of 2017, so 2 months later, my main sponsor decided to tell me that they weren't moving forward with our partnership like we already agreed on from the last year and had great results. And I was just like, what's going on? And that's when I took on the meeting. I was like, there's a higher purpose for what I'm going through, and it's to help other people. So I took the rest of the year to explore what that looked like. I was continuing to train, continuing to ride with all my friends at the facility we had at the same level, progressing. I just wasn't focused on competing. And then I got asked at the end of the year by a friend who owns an action sports like show with parkour and gymnastics and all that stuff as a combined event for music parks and different festivals and things like that. She's like, hey Josh, I got this corporate gig and it's in San Diego, February 2018. They have this theme, no limits, this year for their corporate event. And they asked if I have an athlete that fits it. And I thought of you. Would you be interested in talking with the EVP of the company and just seeing if you're interested? And I was like, Jill, I made a commitment to no longer compete and perform and anything like that, but this sounds cool. And it's, at the time I was still, I was draining my savings account because I was unemployed. I had no sponsors. I wasn't competing. I wasn't performing. So I was like, here's an opportunity to make some money and see where it goes. And so the interview with the EVP turned out to him asking me all about mindset, all about health, all about fitness, all about this and that, and what I'd overcome. And, we talked for like an hour. And then at the end of it, he's like, do you do coaching? Now, in 2014, I went through a health coaching certification program, and I had never used it because I was still competing. But I was just passionate about health and nutrition and optimizing. And then I started learning more about the mental and emotional aspects of our identity, our subconscious programming, and get in the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, Nicole Opera, like psychologist, psychiatrist, neuroscience, like all this stuff. Because I was trying to understand myself and what I was doing, why I was able to do all that I was doing. And so that question came about in my mind. I was like, no, I haven't really done that formally. But I just blurted out, yeah, of course. And he's like, oh, great. You're going to push me and my four-person executive team. We had 3.5 months till the event. And this was at the end of 2017, getting ready for their event in February 2018. So he's like, you're going to coach me and 4 of my executive team. I was like, all right, cool. And I did that. And I got them great results. And then he gave me, I was at the event performing, and then he gave me a booth at the event to promote my coaching business. And that's how it started. And it just fell into my lap. And then April 2018, I got asked to speak at University of Florida to just tell my story. And I had never done that. And I was like, all right, cool. Like even though I was afraid of these new opportunities, I was so focused on the purpose of what I was here to do. And it wasn't to ride BMX or to compete. I rode because I loved it, but I didn't need to compete. That was a ego-driven thing, which was hiding insecurities. I was hiding behind the success of being an insecure person and, having my own doubts and this and that, dropping out of high school, especially like all these things that society was influencing me to take on. I was hiding behind my successes in BMX. So here were some new opportunities that were solely purpose-driven, obviously made me feel good because I'd rather do something that's helping people rather
Sure.
than something I don't enjoy. But I continued to just have these opportunities fall in my lap and take them, even though I was, scared out of my mind because it's something I hadn't really done.
I
But
like your attitude. I like the fact I can do this. And then you make a plan and you make it happen. I mean, that's what people need to hear more about.
And that's what I learned with BMX that I wasn't aware I was doing, but I had my sights set on this vision that I had been exposed to from other people. I call them virtual mentors. Dave Mirra, I had posters of him on my wall, and other riders. I became friends with them. I became competitors with them. I partied with them. I trained with them. Like I lived a daily basis. I had a key to Dave Mirra's private warehouse and a key to Ryan Eichholz's private warehouse at one point. And I remember taking a photo of them in my hand. I was like, this is crazy. I had posted them on my wall. Now and watched them on TV and X Games and all that. Now I'm at the same events with them. So it starts with that vision and then asking yourself, and we can consciously talk about this as adults now. But what I've learned is I was started with a vision and I was like, what would it take to do that? Like in my mind, I had to compete. I had to get sponsors. I had to film videos. I had to perform at these events. I had to get exposure and I had to practice and rehearse and just become obsessed with the process. And now consciously I can take that. And that's what I do with my clients and my talks and these conversations is talk about what I learned from those experiences. And ultimately it took me getting a death sentence at 21 years old to open my mind from a fixed mindset to an open mindset to realize all of these things and how to optimize inside and out to become the best version of myself, which leads me to becoming on purpose, which is another question. Yeah, how do I find my purpose? How did you find your purpose? And it's like, my path is not going to work for everyone because it's not even relevant. But what I've noticed that we can all resonate with is I pursued what I felt I wanted to do in my life. And that pursuit of becoming the best version of myself, that was my purpose. It led me to new priorities, new passions, and all these new things that all shifted. And then I was like, here's my true purpose. But it took being on self for so long and making sense of that to get to the point where, okay, now I can help other people. So I know that was like a big circle, but to tie a bow on it, I didn't know that China was going to be my last event. Things happened and my priority shifted, my focus shifted, and it came to a larger purpose than myself. And then that's where I am today.
I like that. And it made me think of something that you wrote not too long ago that you posted on LinkedIn. You talked about living in a dual reality, and the further we try to avoid the darkness while striving for the light, the more we suffer. Where were you in that moment? What were you thinking when you penned that?
Yeah, so that's been a struggle. I'd say not a struggle, but a challenge for many years, and consciously the last 3 years. So I'm what is it, April 29th? So I'm like 2 years and 3 months I haven't touched my bike, and that was a personal decision before I even started having seizures last year and the second brain surgery last year. Like all that stuff, it was just I realized I got to a point where this gap of who I believed I was and who people perceived me as was growing further and further apart. I felt I was passionate about speaking, about coaching, helping people, but I had built an identity around what I did so long as the BMX athlete, and that's how people perceived me. So when I started showing up differently, I was like insecure, I was imposter syndrome, like all those things. And I realized after talking with a friend of mine, his name is Jimmy Ferris, in January of 2020, right, the month I decided to stop riding. I rode the last time I ever touched my bike a week before I met him. And we were at an event speaking and hanging out. And I was like, Jimmy, you're 10 years retired from NFL, right? And like, you ever played like a pickup game? Like you flag football, touch football, like anything like that? He's like, no, just toss the ball a couple times with some friends and family, like things like that over there. But I've never played anything remotely close to what I used to do. And I was like, that's it. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I am so stuck between the past, which is creating the present, and I'm able to dictate my future because of that identity. And I want to become a well-known speaker of inspiring people. And I want to become the best version of myself in that field and build my coaching practice of helping people optimize their mindset and their health. But I'm like on the fence. I'm like back and forth. And every time I get on that bike, it's my past known familiar place of mastery and confidence that I didn't understand at the time until that conversation with Jimmy was hiding all of my insecurities. It was fueling the imposter syndrome because I was dipping my toes into what I used to identify as. And that took me, every time I did that, it took me one step back from the progress I was making as a speaker and a coach. And I was like, in that moment when he answered my question just so simply, I was like, that's it. I got to stop riding. And that trip was, I mean, the weekend before that trip was the last time I touched my bike. And it got me to where I am today. So it was just like, then, listening to my intuition on that, which is something I was learning to do all along with all these wake up calls and multiple brain tumor diagnoses, all these things, I kept ignoring it. But then, like I said, May of 2021, I started having seizures, and then that revealed a 5th brain tumor, a golf ball size one in the frontal lobe to the left, and I had to have surgery. That was another thing, and so it was 11 years since the first one at the time, and I was about to go into surgery, and awake surgery at that. So listening to my intuition, and then Jimmy helping affirm that intuition, speaking to me. Had I been riding at the level I was, which is largely, there's a large risk of hitting your head, like I've done multiple times over the years, not knowing what was going on in my brain at the time, I probably wouldn't be where I am today, physically speaking and intellectually. And then having this conversation, things may have been a little different. But because I listened to myself and I needed to do that for myself as an identity piece, it also helped me with a physical aspect of health in my brain. And, just so many things with that. But yeah, so does that answer your question?
Oh, yes. Oh, without
Awesome.
doubt.
It's quite a powerful interaction that you actually had with that guy. It was just in a week that you asked him a question, he responded, and you utilized that information to digest as to where you want to go. And I'm going to read a quote that you put. Did you quote this after your conversation? I forgot his name. Remind me what it is.
Jimmy.
Yep. Jimmy, I am self-aware enough to know that I take time on the bike. It takes me further away from where I want to go. It was a quote that I read. Was that ignited by Jimmy?
I don't remember so if it was something I wrote, it probably was in that moment of reflecting on the conversation. So it was probably inspired by that conversation. Jimmy's become a very close friend, like an older brother to me now. So yeah, a lot of the things I write, it's something I'm actively working on, have just recently discovered about myself, especially when I'm writing like that. It's like a reflection piece, and I'm sharing with other people to help them, become inspired in their own way. But yeah, I mean, a lot of like what I've made sense of my life, like Jimmy was a big catalyst to that, and having that conversation, which then he inspired me to learn more about neurolinguistic programming and how our unconscious mind and our conscious mind really work, and to fueling our behavior and our personality, which creates our personal reality. So that quote was just a reflection of just what I've been learning about myself. And I mean, I have so many people to thank, like Jimmy and, one of my favorite virtual mentors who I've met a couple times in person, become a friend, Kerwin Ray. I love the work he does. To me, he's like a hybrid of Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk. With an Australian accent. So, but his work's helped me so much. So I can't give credit to just one person, but I can give a lot of credit to Jimmy. And
you have to give credit to yourself, actually, because I tell you why.
That's been a struggle too.
If you don't have an open mind, and you're not open to allowing people into your life, and if you don't consciously listen to them, because the reality is you are the average. It's quite a cliche, but it's a fact. I believe in it. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with, right? Your success, your ability to navigate challenges, your ability to look at the world from a positive perspective, your ability to be able to find purpose and help people find theirs is all as a result of you wanting to take the first step to ignite that within other people and reaching out to people that can actually support you through that journey. So hats off to you, mister.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but that reminds me of this tattoo I have. There we go. Oh.
Okay.
So
I see it.
C is greater than E. And I actually just had someone interpret it in a different way that I also liked. But for me, it's being at cause is greater than being at effect to our reality. It's the equation to empowerment to me. And someone said something about being at cause, or I forget how he said it, but it was like, it's something about success, and it's like it's greater than being at, I forget what he said, but anyway, something about being greater than excuses. And I forget what the C stood for him, and that was his interpretation. But to me, that's how I've taken my life since that first diagnosis in 2010. was just like take ownership of my life,
Yeah.
and the good and the bad. Because as soon as I've learned to do that, I've also learned that whatever I am not enjoying and I created that, then I also have the power to change that. It may not be
Absolutely.
easy, but it's that simple, and it's a simple shift of focus. And I know, Tony Robbins has been famous for many reasons, but this quote of where your focus goes, your energy flows. And
Absolutely.
so I've literally learned how that works from top down, meaning our brain to our body, and even our spirit, of like how the intentions that we have and the focus we give them, how our brain creates chemicals that our body feels as emotions and feelings, which is the language of the body, that signals back to our brain that we're feeling what we're thinking and cycling through, which then influences our behavior. So by taking ownership of being at cause for our life, and not to say we, aren't, we have control over things. It's not about that. It's saying we're at cause for how we respond rather than at effect. So being at effect is, to me, is being a victim, which I experienced with the first diagnosis. Like, why me? Am I a bad person? What did I do to deserve this? It's not me. It's that. It's this. It's all these things. Like, it was just making excuses. As soon as I stopped making excuses and took accountability for my life, that's when I started to see my life change inside and out. And there's many people like Jimmy and others I've mentioned to thank, but like you said, if it wasn't for me making the decisions to be open to those things and to change those things myself, no one was going to do it for me, then I wouldn't be here. And that's yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because that was something my coach helped me recognize that. And she was like, you give credit to all these people but yourself. And I was like, yeah, let's explore that. And so, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's something that I definitely, take ownership now, is like, and that's why I like people like Russ, who's a hip hop artist. He's got on some of his tracks, because he's no label and all that. He has his own, and he's like, yo, shout out to me. Like, he's got many people he thanks, but like some of them he's like, shout out for me for doing this. Like, shout out to my fans for supporting it, but like, shout out to me because I did it,
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
So you opened the door for something I was going to ask you much later, but towards the end, when you started showing some of your art, your body.
Yeah.
For those that are will be watching, can you show your forearms?
Yeah. So here's my right
and
arm.
the other one. So tell the people, for the ones that just listen to audio, what it says. And I'd like to know, because everybody that gets tattoos, for the most part, is a story behind it. There's a reason that they get it. It's a meaning to it. So if you can just share that meaning, first of all, what it says, and then where were you and what were you thinking when you had that done?
Yeah, so it says fear is just a thought, and then on the other arm, thoughts can be changed. And to me, fear is just an emotional response to a thought. And I had learned that very vividly many times. And what I was learning at the time when I got it was how we can shift our focus and thoughts. We can then shift our energy and our emotions, and then that'll influence new behavior or new actions, and then we'll get new results, or we'll create a new reality. And there's an exercise, it's very simple, that goes with this. It's an acronym of TEAR, TEAR. Thoughts drive emotions, which influence our actions, which creates our reality or results. I like to use the word reality. So it speaks to one of my 3 fundamental beliefs about life, that our reality is a manifestation of our choices. And so when I got it, it was the day after I had lunch with Dave Mira in 2016, which also happened to be 3 days before he passed, and was diagnosed later on from CTE. But I was having lunch with Dave, and I had this idea for this tattoo. And I was like, I'm going to, see our mutual friend, Brian Lee, in Greenville, North Carolina. That's where I was at the time. But I was like, I'm going to see Brian tomorrow to get this tattoo. And on his arms, on his forearms, he had his daughter's names, like Mackenzie and Madison on either one of them, or Maddie. And I was like, man, I really like that placement. And so it was Dave that inspired where I got it. But that, at the time, I forget exactly where that phrase came to me. It was just, but like now it makes sense. It was just like where I was getting into the depths of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work of the unconscious and the conscious, and how our brain creates neuropeptides and these chemicals that create this and that. And we feel it in our body and our tissues, and trauma gets locked into it, and all these things. And what I was experiencing was a lot of fear. And so I was like, man, and I was just learning this concept. I was like, fear is just an emotion that we feel from stress and cortisol and norepinephrine and all these different hormones. But it's all driven by thought. The thought is the catalyst to what we feel. And then at the time I was like, man, like I just love this concept of fear just being a thought, and we can change our thoughts. And that was the first tattoo I ever got. I think I was 27 at the time. And then obviously it's led on. I have, many others, but it
It's
was to me, it
addictive.
was, yeah, it is. And to me, like you said, every tattoo I have has a deep purpose. And that to me was a going through the process and then having it there. It was just a reminder to myself to just catch my thoughts and to change them with awareness when I was noticing them. And if they weren't serving me, because for so long I realized, for so long, the thoughts I was having were just adopted from growing up and being, hearing things and not having a prefrontal cortex to decipher what's true and not for me and to choose what I believed. And I had all these things from society and all these things. And I was like, man, like that's kind of all bullshit, in its own way. And like I can change the narrative, but it takes time and it takes conscious repetition. So when I got it, it was going to be a permanent reminder to me to change my thoughts. And anytime I'm sensing fear, to ask myself, where is it coming from? What thoughts am I entertaining that's making me feel this way? And what's inspiring those thoughts? What do I have going on or in my life? Or what am I trying to accomplish that these thoughts are presenting themselves, which is making me feel this fear? And that's the origin of it, really.
That's actually quite powerful, Josh. At what age were you when you clearly very aware, heightened, you know yourself. You're less, from what I'm hearing, you're less distracted by what other people think about you. But it took you through a journey, right? So when that freedom that you speak to, when did it become an absolute reality for you? Like at what age?
So I guess it depends on how we define that question, because consciously wasn't until 2015 when I started learning about how our minds work and our thoughts and our emotions and all that stuff. So I think it was like 26 or so at the time. But then upon reflecting, I was like, man, I was just modeling like at an early age, and I was unconsciously, taking on this belief in myself, which largely was due to my parents supporting me and instilling that belief of you work hard, you can achieve what you want. It takes that dedication. That's why my mom never really cared about my grades. She cared more so about my effort. And then when she started to see my grades slip and therefore my effort slip, she started to notice my efforts were increasing in work and BMX, and why I was excelling at both of those and not so much academics, which is interesting because I went to a trade school in high school. So I got to go in my 10th year, I got to go to work for 2 weeks and then school for academics for 2 weeks. So I was making money as a 16, 17-year-old in high school for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks of academics back and forth. And then, in the summer I was working full time and competing. So just unconsciously, it's just how I was raised. And when I started to work, it was just that same work ethic. You want better results, you work for it. And then consciously, I started to understand how that dynamic and that paradigm actually works as a human being, and how to focus on these things to optimize the results I wanted to see in my life. And a large portion of that and feeling fulfilled to me is helping other people do the same. That's why my content 99% of the time is sharing what I'm learning or value that I've learned or whatever it is. It's never really like, here's what it's not like, here's what I'm experiencing or what I'm doing. Like when I, started sharing back in the day when Instagram first came out about BMX, I'm at this event, this and that. Even so, like that started to transition to like a deeper message behind, like I'm out here competing in Croatia or whatever. It's like, here's what I did to get here. And I, consciously became aware of that. And that's what I've gone all in on today. So to answer that question, it's like, there's two levels, consciously and unconsciously. And so it's just been like 5-6 years now where I've just like been fully aware of that and doing my best to learn it. I mean, if you look at my bookshelf, majority of them are like brain related books from neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and the list goes on.
You can't see. Most of it is that. I also studied many things. NLP is one of them, actually. Yep. But I think it's so powerful to be able to get you focused and be able to achieve the best version of yourself and everybody else. So I get you. I think it's that Scorpio mentality I'm feeling.
Yep.
So So the points, sorry. I love the fact that your mom was supportive. I love the fact that you had the experience, unlike most kids here in South Africa. It's their parents are so fixated on academic qualifications. Trade schools are not something that is encouraged. But I believe it's something that South African families need to do more of that, and for other reasons. I'm not going to digress. So I like your experience and where you've come from. The fact that you've had a supportive mom. It's so important to. I think that experience is just beautiful on multiple levels because it made you who you are. Actually, you understand to balance work, balance studies, and balance your pro thing. And not many kids at that age have that level of responsibility. In hindsight, it seems to me it served you well.
Yeah, no,
Do you agree?
I agree. I mean, and like
Yeah.
people, like, people talk about they want freedom and they want to do this and that, but it comes from discipline and structure and having a sense of responsibility. And that's what my mom, she was like, you want to go? Because I was hanging out with older friends that were driving when I wasn't able to drive because they, we were trying to go to contests. And she was like, yeah, you guys can go do that. You can go to this for the weekend. But I had to earn that sense of trust, and through being responsible and not getting into trouble and getting my homework done, and at least just passing, but also because my parents knew that school wasn't important to me. I was able to succeed, but I was working. I was learning how to run a business, which is the trade I picked in school, was in landscaping. And I was working for a friend of the family that was, essentially conditioning me to run my own business. And that was something he did with all his people that worked for him, 4 or 5 years. He'd gift them a truck, a trailer, mower, and all the, tools, and go out on their own and start their own business. That's what he was grooming me to do the same.
Oh.
And I was going to high school for it. And I was competing and training, and I, in the off season of landscaping.
You're a rock star, right? You can do anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's at the end of the day, that was the belief my parents instilled in me, was like, you can do whatever you want, you just have to work for it, and you have to show. Yeah. And so, that level of competency gave me confidence in the belief of, hey, I can do this with BMX. I just need to put the work in. And so I became obsessed with the process. I know that's become like a cliche saying and people don't quite understand it, but it's quite literal. Like you get so focused on results that you don't understand unconsciously. You're contrasting the lack of results to what you want. And then that's creating this cycle of thinking and feeling. And that creates a core belief that it's not possible for you, or that you're not able to, or these things. That people miss the process. They miss getting obsessed with the journey of creating that outcome that they want. I mean, and Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this, his whole illusion of like owning the Jets one day. He's like, I'm very well aware that I may never do that, but I just love the process of grinding and working and do these things that I enjoy, with the idea that maybe one day I'll be able to, but I don't focus on that. And that's the same thing with focus. Like, you have to be aware of your focus. And it's not to say don't set goals, don't set future targets and desired outcomes and that vision that you're working towards, but then you have to reverse engineer it. And that's why I love Gary Williams or Keller Williams, this whole like one thing model, because it's like you take that someday goal and you just reverse engineer it by 10, 5, 1, 3 years into the present moment of what can I do? What's one thing I can do now to move the needle forward, and I'm paraphrasing, that's not their full quote, but it's just like focusing on that process, and focusing on the process allows you to build that momentum and put the foundation together that's going to achieve what you want. But it's not just about doing, it's about being. Who are you how are you thinking? How are you feeling? Like, how are you showing up? Like, who ultimately are you becoming that's going to have the results that you want? Because the person that you are today is obviously not, whatever you're doing is not the person that lives the life you want. And that's where people get caught up in this whole manifestation, like law of attraction. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about it every day and I'm just meditating. It's like, you have to still show up. And that showing up isn't just working and doing. It's like part of that work is internally. And that's Absolutely. The belief I have. Our internal reality is projected and reflected to us by external world. Our external is just a mirroring of what we got going on inside of us. So the work is multifaceted. And I just thought, especially being an athlete, that it was just like how much I do and how well I do it. But I didn't realize there was unconscious programs running that I wasn't aware of. And that was a part of the work too, is resting, is taking time to reflect. It's, not speaking, not reading, not trying to learn, and just be aware of what's coming up inside of me with thoughts and what my body is telling me. And that was something I learned the hard way, was, avoiding what my intuition, my gut was telling me. And then actually I wrote this down because something you said earlier was, when I first got diagnosed, I realized, I was like, later on, I was like, man, I didn't have a pain pill deficiency, because you were mentioning like, it's okay to fire your doctor and get a second opinion. Like, I didn't know that though. I was like, oh, you're the professional. You know me better than I know myself, like as far as my health goes. But that wasn't the case because they were judging me by the book, by my cover. They were judging, like they were looking at my physical appearance saying, oh, you're 21, you're in shape, you're a professional athlete. Oh, you just have headaches. You don't need a scan. Come back and, here's some pain pills. Come back if you need more. I didn't have a pain pill deficiency. I had a brain tumor. It took hitting my head early 2010 to get an MRI because now it was deemed necessary because I hit my head. They make sure I didn't have a TBI. Lo and behold, I had a massive brain tumor taking up the left side of my brain that was there. My neurosurgeon was like, it could have been there for up to 2 years based on the size of it. And they didn't know how it wasn't having seizures and all that. But so the moral of the story is like, we know ourselves, but it takes quieting ourselves to really understand what's going on inside of us. And that's why I love people like Dr. Nicole LePera and her book, How to Do the Work. It's such a brilliant title and it makes so much sense because the work never stops, but it's also a reframe of what work means. And a lot of work is developing self-awareness and why that person or that thing is triggering you. It's not them. It's not that thing. It's what's going on inside of you. And something that she's taught me is trauma isn't what happens to us. It's what happens inside of us. It's how our brain and our body process the events by all the chemicals and all those types of things. And then how our left brain, the interpreter of our lives, interprets and makes up stories of what's going on. And then how unconsciously we make a decision in that moment that turns into a core belief that we live. And then we wonder why we're sick, tired, unhappy, and afraid. Well, you've been running a program that's not serving you. It did at one point. Maybe something bad happened and you got shut down and protected yourself, which was great in the moment. But then that's made you cold. And maybe you're wanting a loving relationship, but you're so cold and like you think the worst of everyone. Then you're pushing the very person you want away that's right in front of you. And so it took me a while to understand these things. And I just think that title, How to Do the Work, is so brilliant. And the work doesn't stop, but it's not just doing, it's being. And that's a quote my friend shared with me that I love is, doing is for the body, being is for the soul.
Absolutely.
We have to, and I think you've talked to my friend Mitch Webb, so you know him. He's the one that shared that with me from a book he read, and I just love that because I was always the doer. That was me, and it took my coach challenging me for a month. She was like, "I want you to stop all external learning." We called it a 30-day educational detox because I was obsessed with it. And what I learned through that 30 days of no podcasts, no YouTube videos, no books, no learning of any kind was I was addicted to stress, and I was living with a limiting belief that I didn't know enough, and people weren't going to take me serious because I was a high school dropout. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't this or that. I was just a high school dropout professional athlete. And so what I learned through that process of those 30 days was I was addicted to stress, and anytime my calendar was open, I had to fill it because I was insecure and I lived in a chaotic childhood and all these things. So I didn't know I was addicted to stress. And I had this limiting belief that I needed to just kept needing to consume to learn more, to be good enough for people to take me serious. And that's another book that I love is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which goes into detail of all these things from Dr. Joe Dispenza. All of that, I said all that because it's relevant to how we get caught up in thinking we need to do more. We need to work more. We need to do. And oftentimes we're doing way too much. The answer in front of us, it just takes us to stop for a second and reflect. And the last thing I want to say on this is, we look at athletes, and I being a former athlete, I know this to be true. Recovery is just as important as training. But within the business world or with, non-athletic things, we get caught up in thinking we just need to grind and hustle and we can sleep more later on and all these things. And then we wonder why we're burnt out. We're stressed, we're anxious, we're overwhelmed. Our health is declining. We have all the success in the world on paper or externally, but we wonder why we're overweight or unfulfilled or we're not in a loving relationship or all these things. Because we're doing so much that we're forgetting to be and just learn of what's coming up in the moments of being.
You said so many powerful things. How old are you really? Don't answer that. Seriously, I mean, you've dropped or you landed some amazing pearls of wisdom, actually, that people need to really listen and digest what you've just said, because we make ourselves sick instead of taking time out and reflect and be more aware and have a heightened sense of who are you and what is it that's important enough to actually channel energy into it, to realize it. Oh my God, you've said some incredible stuff. I mean, you are an amazing coach, clearly, and you read all these books. Are you still do you take time out?
Oh yeah,
No,
I block out, if you look at my calendar, and I share this with Mitch. I was like, man, like I don't ever want to work more than half of my life. Like that's not what I want to live. Like that's not a part of my ideal vision for my life. So I plan work and non-work related things throughout the entire week. The only day I don't do work is on Sundays because I go golfing in the morning with my fiance's dad and his friends. And then that's my one day to like just fully check out.
Sure.
And Saturday, largely, I don't do much work related things except for working on the business, like emails and like maybe some content creation or things like that. You know, not working in the business. You know, I'm working on it. But then in the week, I have random days and time blocks blocked out. Like I have 3 mornings where 7:30 to 10 I block out. I go to the driving range and I work on different chipping and driving and all these things. Like that's just my checkout. And
That's
then I have my
important.
day filled up. But then I have certain blocks of like just me time. That's something I've learned too with creativity. If we're just doing and we're stressed all the time, there's no possible way we can allow the information to come in and new ideas to pop up. So it looks different for everyone. And I choose to take my 7 days of the week and just not look at it as a weekend or a weekday or anything like that. It's just like, I'm going to do what I want. And it always changes. You know, I got my dad flying in the second weekend of May. And so I have that Wednesday to that Monday blocked out entirely for us to just do whatever. But that's the beauty of designing your own business. And I mean, I'm at the point now where I can do that. There was a lot of times where I had to just nonstop grind. But I also had the understanding that I need to take time for myself. I need to sleep. That's to me, a non-negotiable is my health. And I think that that's a message that I really want any, you know, entrepreneur or person, any field of career business is to understand like non-negotiables is to me is taking care of my brain. Because if my brain's suffering, I'm not going to be my best self. That's the same for a parent. That's the same for a child. That's the same for an athlete, an artist, a person in business of any kind. If your brain's suffering, your work is going to suffer. Your life is going to suffer. Your education, your finances, all those things. If your health's not a priority now, it will become a priority. And that's why I share my stories, because I don't want people to react to a life or death situation or anything even close like I had to. I share because I want people to be inspired to learn from a place of joy and inspiration to change, because they know why it's important based on the values that they share and where they audit those levels of their values and not have to react the way I had to react, because I've learned that you can do things the hard way, which I've gone through, or you can be proactive about your life. And we live in such a reactive society on all fronts where it's like, oh, this is not a problem now, but what are you going to do when it becomes a problem that you may not be able to handle or take care of or overcome? What then? And I think that's largely due to fears and things like that. So my job is to make people become as aware if they can, as long as they're open and honest, which is why I work with select people. There's an auditing process, but my message largely is to help people become inspired to look at themselves openly and honestly and ask them questions like, why am I experiencing X? Do I say my health or my relationships are valuable, but I'm like at a level 2 of focus and energy going into it. Therefore, I'm seeing why it's at a level 4. Like, you know, things like that. But it takes being open and honest with yourself. And I had a wake up call for my life literally being threatened to take away from me that got me there. But I don't believe majority of people don't need to get to that place. I had to for several reasons. One of them being stubborn. 2, because I'm able to be on this process or this path now, in the process I'm on, of being open and vulnerable and inspiring other people to learn from my mistakes and what I've learned from those things and how I apply moving forward.
So, Josh, you are a mindset coach and you do a lot of amazing stuff. I want to go back to August last year, because that's when you had one of your awake surgery.
Yeah.
What was your mindset? What were you telling yourself to get through that? I can't imagine going through an awake surgery. Like, I want you to put me to sleep if you're taking out my tooth. I don't want to. I don't want to
You're
be
a big baby.
I am a big baby, and I am proud of it. I'm okay with that. But what was your mindset going into that awake surgery?
My mindset was, this is what I have to do. I was excited because I thought in 2010 I was going to be awake, and I was petrified. And so now I was like, okay, this is going to be, rather than being anxious, the same level of energy is excited. So I was excited because it was an opportunity. 2 opportunities. 1, to let people know this shit's real for me. I don't just talk theory. This is really applicable to my life, and it can be for yours. And it was 11 years that people may have not remembered since the first surgery. And so here's an opportunity to let people back in and realize how real this is for me. And two, I thought it was interesting as an opportunity, and I was excited because most people never are awake for surgery. What a crazy human experience to have and to share. And I was with the best of the best, Dr. Quinones, here in Jacksonville at Mayo Clinic in Florida. And for those that are interested in learning about him and his story and his work, there's a Netflix series called The Surgeon's Cut. It's 4 parts, and he's the second episode titled The Sacred Brain. And they actually bring you through a patient going through open brain surgery awake. And so I was excited because I saw it as an opportunity to let people know that this is real. I don't just talk theory. I'm a big fan of application and mentoring, which is anyone can learn something and coach on it. But what I see really valuable, and there's nothing wrong with that, but for me personally, I want someone that's been up the mountain, doesn't just know how to get up the mountain from a book or from a documentary. I want someone that's been there, had the experiences, that can take me through it and know how to get me on track and can relate and understand, and actually say they understand. And so I saw this as an opportunity to let people in, and it was a cool experience. I have a fascination with altered states of the mind and deprivation, float tanks and things like that, and meditate, like all these. I was like, there's nothing that's going to compare to this. And there wasn't. I participated in my surgery, and it was scary, but I just kept focusing on the opportunity I had at hand. And I had 11 years of training in the making that my fiance kept reminding me. And when we woke up that day, she's like, "You've been training for this. It's game day. Let's go." And that's literally what she said. And I was like, "Yeah, that's right. Let's do it." So I was scared. I mean, I'm not gonna lie like that, but the courage isn't defined by the absence of fear. Courage is acknowledging your fear and refocusing.
Exactly.
That's powerful, actually. I'm stuck. Yeah. Can I ask a question? Like, you've been through quite a few surgeries, right? The first one would have been quite traumatic. The latest, I'm not saying the latest surgeries were not traumatic. Is the process different? Is it less invasive?
No, it's the same. They used the same scar, so that was cool. And they took out. I came to after they kind of knocked me out to go in. I woke up to them taking the old screws out and then cutting open my skull. So it's very invasive. It's open. I'm waiting to get video of it too, which would be interesting. But there's nothing less invasive. It's the same open cranial surgery. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
You're very inspirational, though. Your perspective in life and the way you look at things, you acknowledge your fear and you go, you know what, I'm still going to go through. And the way your positive mindset and your supportive partner, your fiance, clearly helps you challenge or
100%.
navigate these difficult routes. And there's such an important lesson for people listening to it. It's like you attract what you feel largely. And if you can get to a space where you acknowledge the fear and tell yourself that you're going to be able to get through it, you're more likely to come out on the other side. Because as Josh pointed out, every single emotion we feel moves through every tissue in our body, right? You'd rather be excited than afraid, because that emotion does impact recovery and healing and all of that. But Josh, you're good at this. Come on, give us a little bit more.
Well, I do have to. I just realized I'm a little over time. I do have to hop on a call.
Sorry.
I was going to say I would love to have a conversation with the two of you again, especially once I start my podcast back up. Mitch and I had a conversation back in October. That was the last episode I posted, but I would love to hang out with you guys some more and chat, whether on your podcast or on mine. But I will say what you just were speaking to is the power of shifting our thoughts. It's focus, and that's become a new belief of mine that I've added to the list. Is what we focus on expands, and that's in NLP, but it's true. I mean, what we focus on expands. So if you're focusing on all the reasons you have to be negative, that's going to expand, because your unconscious mind's main objective is to affirm your beliefs to you, because that's comfortable and that makes you feel good and safe. So if you're focused on, the old example of like you wake up and stub your toe, that's going to ruin your day. Because if you focus on it, you're going to find all the other reasons to be pissed off, to be upset and all that. But if you focus on shit, that hurt, what could I do next time? I mean, it's a simple, very, surface level example, but it's like, maybe turn the lights on, maybe, don't walk that way or be frantic. Like, I don't know, like maybe take a second before you get out of bed, like something very silly, but it's like, it's that simple. And the challenge is it's not easy, because our brain and our body are not, very simple mechanisms. They're very complex. So it's, at the end of the day, it's not easy, but it's simple. And if you can focus on the simplicity of it rather than making it complex and just apply and integrate what you're learning, then that's the difference of getting to where you want, and getting to where you want more efficiently and effectively than going the other way.
Well,
Okay,
Josh, go ahead, Charmaine.
I'm just going to say I loved having you here. I do love you. I love your spirit. I love your energy, and I love what you're doing what you're pouring into the world. So good luck and best of luck with everything. And thank you for being here. We'll definitely have you back. I love listening to your insights. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I love and appreciate you guys as well.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you. And for all those that are listening to this podcast or the video cast, what are you focusing on? So thank you for joining the Ubuntu House. We love you all. Peace. Have a blessed day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Until next time, take care.
Have a nice, everyone. Take care. Bye.